Ja and the Grizzlies, are we irreconcilable differences at this point, Wendy?
I can't say that. I think it's definitely bears a lot of watching, and I think the league is watching it. I saw that today. Nike is putting out. Is this the Ja 2 or the Ja 3? They're releasing the shoe today, and I think the tagline. I'm sure this was, to be clear, I don't have any insight into the marketing, and for all I know, the tagline was established months ago. Just to be clear. However, I saw the release from Nike, and it's in the tagline on the shoe was "Let Ja be Ja." So I think that's it.
Mm.
I think it's what there's actually kind of a bit of a fascinating experiment that's gone on in Memphis over the last 2 years. One, so they brought in these European coaches, and so last year there was this assistant who was an assistant alongside Tuama Sasolo. This guy Noah LaRoche. I think he might be an American, but he sort of was schooled in Europe, and they put in this like sort of new age offense, and where you don't run pick and rolls or whatever. I don't need to go into the X and O's of it, but Ja didn't like it, and they end up firing Taylor Jenkins and this assistant in the middle of the season, or near the end of the season. And that, by the way, this assistant Noah LaRoche has gone on and redesigned the Heat's offense, and the Heat are having a good start to the season based on this offense. So Tuama Solo comes in, and he's Finnish, okay? And this guy was one of the hottest. The cool kids in the NBA 2 years ago were all over Tuama Solo. He coached in Germany, then he went to coach in Paris, and he was like the hot name. And a couple of teams tried to hire him, and it's even possible, I'm not going to get aggregated here, but it's even possible that during last season, a team tried to hire him off of the Grizzlies staff, potentially even to be their head coach. The intelligentsia in basketball loves this thinking, and so his system is to basically play, I don't know, like a hockey style system, or the way Team USA plays in basketball, where you play like super hard for like 3 or 4 minutes, and then you mass sub. You sub 3 or 4 guys at a time. And like the idea here is, basically the Grizzlies are sort of basically trying to just be cutting edge on coaching and to sort of outthink the rest of the league. And meanwhile, it's kind of left Ja behind. Ja was not happy with the last coach, and it's not going well with this coach because these are not systems that are designed to cater to a modern day NBA superstar where the ball is in his hands and everything is run for him. That was not last year, certainly not the case. This year, they do run a lot of pick and roll, but obviously they're running this other system where they're rotating, like they're missing 3 or 4 guys out of their rotation right now, and they are playing 10 guys still. Okay. So they're going way deep on their bench, way deeper than most teams would go to play for this new coach's system. And so there's like this experimental stuff happening, and Ja is not thriving. And so I don't want to put words into Ja's mouth or words into Tuama Solo's mouth, but from the outside, you wonder if that experimentation has gotten Ja in a super happy place over the last couple of years.
So let's say this does end in a trade. Where makes sense for Ja Morant, and what could the return be?
Yeah, well, that's, I think, one of the things that we're waiting and watching for. So I just want to say that I don't think we're there yet. I understand why you're asking the question, and certainly, people in the media like us and people who work in the league who, try to predict and analyze possible situations are certainly working on this. I don't think the Grizzlies are there yet. So before I answer, I just want to be clear. I don't think that's where they are. I think they're still trying to maximize Ja. If they do get to a point where that happens, and it wouldn't knock me over because the Grizzlies have made a series of moves that have sort of been a precursor to this, namely trading Desmond Bane in the offseason for draft picks. That's a rebuild trade. I mean, you can frame it however you want, but when you trade your second best player for draft picks and an expiring contract, that's a trade that you're doing to rebuild. the next step isn't, you don't need like, a stunning, change of circumstances. It's not stunning that they would think about this, but there's a couple of things. He makes $40 million. Trading a player that makes $40 million is not simple. And there's a lot of teams in the NBA that are good and happy with their point guards. There's not a market of 8 teams, 12 teams that are like, oh man, we need a star point guard. A lot of teams are happy with their point guard. So you'd have to be willing to make a trade that the Grizzlies would like. It's not just whoever you send. It has to be a trade the Grizzlies think would be worth trading their franchise player. You'd have to be a team that would need a point guard, and you'd have to be a team that would be comfortable with trading for Ja Morant and the baggage that he would bring. Before you get into like, well, I see this team, and this team, like I wouldn't say it's threading a needle, but it's, you don't have a huge market. And so I don't think right now that's the best move for the Grizzlies. I think the best move for the Grizzlies is to try to make this work. And I think that's what they're going to try to do. There are teams I could just toss out there, and then people would take my words and like go, oh my gosh, this is happening. But I would just be tossing them out there because I don't think there's actually any action on this at all. So there's teams, and you could say them to me, and I'd be like, yeah, that's possible. And certainly I've had conversations over the last 72 hours, like, what about this team? What about that team? I'm like, oh, that would be interesting. That would be interesting. But right now, none of that is actual. It's all hypothetical.
All right, so there are 2 other players that generally make the same amount of money. We're trying to figure out, like, in the lexicon of NBA minds. Because if we're going to take Ja, and let's add LaMelo Ball, and let's add Darius Garland. We got 3 guys that in each of their respective spots all make a lot of money. And I think each of those 3 fan bases is trying to figure out what to do with them. If you were a GM, how would you rank these 3 players?
Well, you can't do it in a vacuum. I mean, you've got them on the screen here as 3 individuals, but all of them are in their own ecosystem. I mean, Darius Garland has, reduced his game a little bit in the last couple of years to fit alongside Donovan Mitchell, and they sort of split. They play like a third of the game together, a third of the game on the bench, and a third of the game without each other. And Garland has really figured out a way to thrive in that role. The problem is that for Cleveland, not a problem, but the challenge for Cleveland is that when they play with those 2 guys, they're very small in the perimeter. So if the Cavs were going to do a deal involving Darius Garland, it would have to be to get a star level player in return and a guy who has size on the perimeter who can defend. I don't think that's LaMelo Ball. He's bigger, but he's certainly not a defender. I don't think that trade makes sense for Cleveland. For Memphis, if you were able to get a star level player and, LaMelo or Garland, I don't know the 3-way trade. I don't know who ends up in Memphis. Getting a star level player back for Ja Morant is not going to be easy. Again, you can say that would be easy, but then when you actually look at what teams would need point guards and what they could trade, I'm not sure that it totally makes sense. The other thing about Cleveland, the reason people are bringing up Cleveland here is because the Cavs are the only second apron team in the league. And the worst thing that happened for trade chatter in the NBA is the aprons, because people will propose a trade or they'll go into their trade machine and then this giant glass of cold water gets poured on it because the aprons make trades much more difficult. Cleveland is very, very limited in what they can do on the trade front because they are a second apron team. They basically have to trade one player for one player. And so the reason that I think this is a topic is that conveniently Darius Garland makes the exact same amount of money as Ja Morant. And so that trade, it's going to take you all morning to find a trade where the Cavs get back a star player. This trade actually is allowed. And because of that, I think people are like, oh, that's it. We found one. I don't think that trade actually makes Cleveland better. So if people are focusing on, whether they can do it, not whether they would do it. In fact, if anything, Cleveland repeatedly over the last couple of years has sent out the message loud and clear. They have no interest in breaking up their core 4 players, maybe to their detriment, depending on on what you believe. But I think this is a non-starter because I don't think either of these two guys make the Cavs any better than the team that they believe that they have, which is a contender.
We're touching on these three young stars. Let's go to another one in Victor Wembanyama. Now, you have noted that the Spurs need to, quote unquote, come with him, to come with Wemby and become a highly competitive team. From what you've observed of this team, what do you think is the single biggest factor that's holding the Spurs back from becoming that team?
Well, they're a super young team. They're right now, although unfortunately Dylan Harper got hurt and is going to be out for a while with a calf injury. They're relying on two guards who one of them is a rookie, one of them's 20. And historically, and each situation is different, so I don't want to print with too broad of a brush, but historically, when you rely on young guards, you will pay that price. So I'll give you an example. The Dallas Mavericks right now, they entered this season and said, we're going to have an 18-year-old be our point guard. And they've got a bottom 3 offense in the league so far. That just comes with it. When you play a young guard, you will maybe benefit from it down the line, and you will maybe have individual nights where you like it, but you're not going to be able to maximize it. So they do have De'Aaron Fox, who will be coming back from hamstring injury soon. But they're relying on some young guys right now. What's exciting about San Antonio, and this is where they're going to have to make a big choice, I think, is that Victor Wembanyama for this year and next year is still on his rookie contract. He is, without question, the biggest bargain in the NBA right now. It's sort of like if you follow the NFL, having your quarterback on his rookie contract. That's when you can maximize. When that quarterback is like in year 3 or year 4 and he's still playing out the string and you don't have to pay him the $50 million or whatever, or you don't have the big cap hit, you can stock the team. And as soon as you pay the quarterback, you kind of have to cut elsewhere. Not only do the Spurs are paying Victor the lower salary this year and next, they are stocked up with draft picks that they can trade, pieces on their roster they can trade. And so they got a decision to make. Do they kind of go now? Do they go into the market and try to take advantage of this year and next year before Wembanyama's contract goes up to the max? Or do they let this keep going organically? Because they're much better. Like with Victor's improvement, they're getting better. That's a question that I think will be something that comes to the center of trade deadline conversations come January. If the Spurs are hanging around the top 4 in January, which I don't think anybody thought the Spurs necessarily be top 4. I think we all thought this might be the year where they could sniff top 6. This would maybe definitely the play-in. If they're looking at maybe getting a home court advantage first round, like maybe they do hit the gas a little bit early. And you got to be careful with that because, once you cash that in, you got to make sure the trade you make is good for Victor medium term too. You don't want to rent a player for a year. But, Victor has been so terrific this year that's something the Spurs, it's almost like a reward that they would have that on their plate to try to deal with.
Wendy, we've known each other for a while, so I'm just going to need you to give me grace here. I need you to let me go full hot take, okay? just full hot take. Indulge me for a second. Austin Reeves leads the Lakers right now in scoring and in assists. He's being dynamic. They're 6-2. Are the Lakers better off without LeBron?
No, they are a really good story in the league. I think both the Lakers and the Bucks are two really good stories in the league. Chicago too. But the Lakers being able, they went 2-1 without Luka and LeBron. And that was because Austin Reeves was awesome in that last week. I was actually, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander won Player of the Week. I know nobody cares about Player of the Week, but I was like, damn, Austin Reeves may never have a week like that again. He has a 50 piece and a 40 piece, and he has 16 assists. He can't win Player of the Week. My God, I mean, Shai is going to win 37 of them. Like, throw Austin a bone. My God, but the fact that they were able to keep their head above water, and then last night, Austin takes the night off and Luka, and they go into Portland and win. Like, the Western Conference is going to come down. The difference between the 3 seed and the 7 seed last year was like 2 games. Getting a win like that in Portland last night, or going 2-1 without Luka and LeBron, like that's the difference potentially later on this season between the Lakers having home court and not. And so I'm very impressed of how the Lakers' depth has been helping them early this season. And, that's all well and good. But at some point, if you're going to win at the highest level, which I mean wins 4 out of 7 against teams like Denver, against teams like Oklahoma City, against teams like Houston, frankly, against a team like Minnesota, which they did not beat last year in the playoffs with home court advantage, you're going to need your all-NBA player. And LeBron James was an all-NBA player last year, unequivocally. And so this is a terrific story for the Lakers that they're able to not suffer while he comes back from this injury. Because at the end of the day, if LeBron and Luka aren't healthy, this team is not making a giant playoff run, probably. I mean, anything can happen in the NBA, but probably. So you have to get LeBron healthy. There's no choice about that. You have to give him the time to recover. That they are not suffering as these guys recover is huge for this team at this point in the year.
Before we let you go real quick, do you have any expectation of when LeBron will return?
I haven't heard that he's practicing full bore yet. If he is, that hasn't been out there. And the Lakers have had a pretty high volume schedule, and so they haven't had a lot of practice time. But I think you will see LeBron return to full practice before you see that. And sciatica is not an injury that we have a lot of data on in the NBA. But I will tell you this. The challenge for LeBron isn't just going to be when he comes back. The challenge is going to be to keep the sciatica from re-flaring, because that's an injury that you can re-aggravate, and you got to stay on top of it. And so making sure that not only when he comes back, but that he's fully healthy longer term. And frankly, with them stacking up these wins without him, I actually think it makes even more sense to give him even more time if they're going to be able to play at this level while he recovers.